We possess an intelligence windfall not from satellite imagery or human assets, but from the sheer bureaucratic incompetence of the adversary, as thousands of internal complaints have been inadvertently exposed by the Russian Human Rights Commissioner's Office. These are not isolated grievances, but over 6,000 tiles in a mosaic depicting a military apparatus that is cannibalizing itself from the inside out. We are not looking at a professional armed force, but at a vast industrial meat grinder built on an insatiable demand for manpower, where President Putin views Russian society as merely a replenishable weapon to sustain forward momentum. The cold reality we must accept is that this brutality is not a bug in the system, but a feature designed to sustain a war of attrition at any cost, regardless of the devastation visited upon countless military families. Drilling down into the mechanisms of recruitment and force retention, we witness a disregard for human life that borders on the irrational, as commanders are deploying soldiers with conditions that would warrant immediate discharge in any civilized military. Intelligence reports confirm troops being sent into combat with stage 4 cancer, epilepsy, severe traumatic brain injuries, and even schizophrenia or post-stroke complications. In the city of Voronezh, the sister of a soldier described a medical commission so farcical that it processed 100 men in a single hour, a speed that confirms this is not a medical evaluation, but a bureaucratic assembly line stamping bodies for the slaughter. We even have video evidence of men on crutches and canes being forced to the front lines, an image that evokes the desperate final days of past century conflicts rather than a modern military operation. The cruelty of this system reaches its nadir with a chilling concept known as zeroing out, a slang term appearing in at least 44 separate complaints referring to commanders ordering the execution of their own troops. This is not a rumor, but a documented reality, where over 100 soldiers have reported direct threats from their superiors, often motivated by financial extortion and the cover-up of crimes. A paradigmatic case is that of 18-year-old soldier Said Murtazalayev, who confessed in a final video that he was forced to collect approximately $15,000 in bribes from his unit to buy their safety, only for his commander to order his death in a suicide assault to bury the evidence when the scheme risked exposure. This demonstrates that the life of a Russian soldier has become a tradable commodity to be liquidated when it no longer holds value. Beyond simple murder, the disciplinary system of the Russian military appears to have reverted to the medieval era, with barbaric torture methods applied to their own personnel. We have corroborated reports and video evidence of soldiers being handcuffed to trees for days without food, water, or sanitation, simply for refusing suicide missions or voicing complaints about their conditions. A mother named Oksana Krasnova provided footage of her son chained like an animal after refusing a senseless propaganda mission to take a photo with a Russian flag on Ukrainian-held territory. Furthermore, the practice of throwing soldiers into deep earthen pits or dungeons is widely used to break the will of dissenters, with survivors describing being treated worse than livestock, beaten until their bones broke and left to rot in filth. This signals a total collapse of command ethics, where discipline is replaced by raw, unadulterated violence. Another dimension of this manpower desperation is the treatment of returned prisoners of war who should be protected and rehabilitated under both international conventions and Russian law. Instead, documents reveal at least 95 cases where POWs were thrown back into the grinder immediately, sometimes within 24 hours of their release. Imagine the psychological state of a soldier who has survived months of captivity and torture only to be forced back into the very hell he escaped, with one soldier writing that his trauma made him a liability on the battlefield, yet commanders ignored his condition. This is not just a human rights violation, but a grave tactical error, as these broken men are incapable of fighting effectively and become a danger to their own units. The rot extends to how the system treats military families who are living in a purgatory of waiting and deceit. Mothers and wives are battling a callous bureaucracy that systematically hides the truth to avoid paying survivor benefits or to conceal criminal negligence. A group of 10 women filed a collective complaint accusing commanders of Unit 36994 of murdering over 300 of their own men and disposing of the bodies in unmarked graves or blowing them up with anti-tank mines to leave no trace. The objective of this savagery is to list the dead as missing in action, thereby denying families compensation while commanders loot the bank accounts of the deceased using confiscated phones. We must also look at the case of Svetlana Popova from Irkutsk to understand the brutality of the cover-up regarding combat deaths. Her son was initially reported to have died of heart failure, then a blood clot, but when she received the body, she found him disfigured with a fractured skull, a broken nose, and a slit throat. The military hospital denied all responsibility, blaming the injuries on the autopsy process, an explanation that insults the intelligence of any observer. Stories like this are pervasive across thousands of complaints, revealing a systemic pattern of deception from the unit level to the highest echelons intended to maintain the illusion of stability and hide the true blood price of this war. However, the most alarming strategic assessment is that Russian society and its military apparatus seem to have normalized this brutality as an inevitable part of wartime existence. Despite thousands of complaints, this is likely only the tip of the iceberg, as fear of retribution keeps the vast majority of victims silent. Natalia Lukyanchuk, a 74-year-old grandmother, bravely reported her grandson being chained to a radiator and beaten, but even she admitted that commanders warned her that complaining would only make things worse. This resignation, combined with tight information control, allows the war machine to continue functioning based on terror and coercion rather than patriotism or volunteerism. In conclusion, from a realist perspective, we must not underestimate Russia's ability to sustain this war simply because of its moral degradation. History proves that Moscow can absorb horrific losses and employ the most brutal measures to achieve political objectives. Their recruitment of convicts and the deployment of the critically ill demonstrates a manpower crisis, but it also signals an unwavering political resolve to continue the fight at any cost. We are facing an adversary unconstrained by conventional morality, an adversary willing to consume its own people to survive, and that demands from us a heightened state of vigilance and strategic patience.